The first light of dawn spread across the river. A thick mist floated above the water. From the walls of Amanzala, the people watched in silence. Hundreds of small boats were moving toward the shore. Each boat was filled with foreign soldiers carrying shining weapons. Behind them, enormous ships waded in the deep water like giant sea monsters. King Jabari stood beside General Bakery. Neither man spoke. They simply watched. Finally, General Bakery broke the silence. "My king, should we attack them while they are still on the river?" Jabari slowly shook his head. "No." The general looked surprised. "The river is not our battlefield. Our land is." As the first enemy boats touched the shore, the foreign commander stepped onto the sand. His name was Commander Roland. He was tall, confident, and dressed in a dark blue military coat trimmed with gold. He looked toward the walls of Amanzala and smiled. "So this is the kingdom that refuses to bow." One of his officers laughed. "They will surrender before sunset." Never underestimate people who fight for their homes. Inside Amanzala, the royal drums began to beat. Boom, boom, boom. The sound echoed through every street. Women hurried children into safe places beneath the palace. The elderly gathered in protected shelters. Healers prepared herbs, clean cloth, and water for the wounded. No one screamed. No one ran in fear. Every person knew their duty. King Jabari had prepared them well. Outside the city, Commander Roland ordered his soldiers forward. Thousands marched toward Amanzala in perfect lines. Their boots shook the earth. Their flags waved proudly. As they approached the city gates, they found no one. The open fields were empty. No warriors, no horses, no archers. One officer frowned. "My commander, where is their army?" Roland narrowed his eyes. "Stay alert. This silence is dangerous." Suddenly, a loud whistle echoed across the hills. Before the soldiers could react, hundreds of arrows flew from the trees. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sky turned black. The hidden hunters of Chief Bemba had struck. The foreign soldiers raised their shields, but many arrows found their targets. Confusion spread through the army. "Find the archers." The soldiers charged toward the forest. But when they reached the trees, no one was there. The hunters had already disappeared. They knew every hidden path, every cave, every narrow trail. The forest itself seemed to be fighting for Amanzala. Commander Roland clenched his fists. Clever. Meanwhile, on the western hills, King Mosi's horsemen waited silently behind rows of tall grass. The moment the foreign soldiers entered the valley, General Bakery lifted his spear. Now, hundreds of horses thundered down the hillside. The ground trembled beneath their hooves. The enemy soldiers barely had time to turn. The horsemen swept through their lines like a rushing river. Then, just as quickly as they had appeared, they disappeared again into the hills. Commander Roland stared in disbelief. They strike and vanish. By midday, the invading army had made little progress. They had expected one great battle. Instead, they faced hundreds of small attacks. An arrow from the trees, a charge from the hills, a trap hidden beneath leaves, a bridge that suddenly collapsed beneath marching soldiers. The land itself seemed to reject them. Every step forward came with a heavy cost. Back inside Amanzala, some young warriors became impatient. "My king, one said, let us open the gates. We can defeat them today." King Jabari smiled. "That is exactly what they want." The young warrior looked confused. Jabari placed a hand on his shoulder. "A lion does not leave its cave to chase every hunter. It waits. It chooses the right moment." The young warrior nodded. He finally understood. As evening approached, Commander Roland climbed a rocky hill overlooking Amanzala. His officers gathered around him. "We underestimated them," one admitted. Another pointed toward the city. "The walls are too strong. The forest belonged to them. The hills belong to them." Commander Roland remained calm. Then he smiled. "If strength cannot open the gates, perhaps hunger will." His officers looked at him. "We surround the city. No food, no trade, no one enters, no one leaves." We will force King Jabari to surrender. The officers nodded. It seemed like a perfect plan, but they did not know. King Jabari had prepared for this long before the first ship appeared. That night, the enemy surrounded Amanzala. Campfires stretched across the plains like thousands of glowing stars. Inside the city, however, there was no panic. Families shared meals. The granaries were full. The wells overflowed with fresh water. The people sang songs to encourage one another. Commander Roland watched from his camp through a small telescope. He expected to see fear. Instead, he saw music. He heard laughter. His face hardened. How can a city under siege still sing? Just before midnight, a hooded figure quietly entered the enemy camp. The guards recognized him immediately. It was Silas, the merchant who had escaped into the forest. He bowed before Commander Roland. "My commander, I have found what you were searching for." Roland leaned forward. "The secret tunnel." Silas smiled. "Yes, I know exactly where it is." Commander Roland's eyes shone with excitement. "If that tunnel truly exists, Amanzala will fall before sunrise." Far away inside the sleeping city, King Jabari stood alone beneath the moonlight. For reasons he could not explain, his heart felt uneasy. He looked toward the stars and whispered, "Something is coming." He was right. The greatest danger was no longer outside the walls. It was a secret passage, hidden beneath the kingdom itself. The city was quiet. Only the sound of guards walking along the walls could be heard. Most families were asleep, believing the strong walls would protect them until morning. But beneath the earth, danger was already moving. Far from the city gates, Commander Roland stood beside Silas at the entrance of a narrow cave hidden by thick vines. Silas held up a lantern. "This is the place," he whispered. "The tunnel leads beneath the city." Roland smiled. "You have served us well." He turned to 50 of his best soldiers. "You will enter the tunnel. Open the city gates from the inside. Once the gates are open, the rest of our army will rush in." The soldiers nodded. One by one, they disappeared into the darkness. Silas followed them. Inside Amanzala, King Jabari could not sleep. Something troubled his heart. He left his room and walked through the silent palace. As he reached the royal courtyard, he found Elder Kondo sitting beneath an old baobab tree. The old advisor smiled. "You cannot sleep either." Jabari shook his head. "My heart tells me the enemy is moving." Elder Kondo looked toward the stars. Sometimes wisdom speaks before the eyes can see. Before either man could say another word, a young royal guard came running. "My king, the old tunnel guards have not reported for duty." Jabari's face changed immediately. "The tunnel." Without waiting another second, he shouted, "Wake General Bakery. Sound no drums. Bring only our fastest warriors." Deep beneath the city, the tunnel was dark and narrow. Water dripped from the stone ceiling. The foreign soldiers walked carefully, their lanterns lighting only a few steps ahead. Silas smiled confidently. "We're almost there." Suddenly, a voice echoed through the darkness. "You should have stayed outside." The soldiers froze. Torches burst into life. Standing ahead was King Jabari. Beside him stood General Bakery Nuru and 30 royal guards. Silas' smile disappeared. "You." King Jabari looked at him with sadness. "You sold your friends for gold." Silas replied coldly. "Gold buys power." Jabari answered, "Loyalty builds kingdoms." Commander Roland's soldiers raised their weapons. General Bakery lifted his spear. Then everything happened at once. Steel clashed against steel. The narrow tunnel echoed with the sounds of battle. Because the tunnel was so small, the enemy could not use their large numbers. Only a few soldiers could fight at a time. That was exactly what King Jabari had hoped for. One by one, the invading soldiers fell back. Others dropped their weapons. The tunnel became too dangerous to cross. In the middle of the battle, Silas saw another path leading deeper into the tunnel. Without anyone noticing, he slipped away. Nuru saw him. "The traitor is escaping." Without waiting for orders, Nuru chased him through the twisting passage. The two men ran deeper underground. Finally, they reached a large stone bridge crossing a deep underground river. Silas stopped. There is no one here to save you now, he sneered. Nuru stood firm. You betrayed your own people. Silas laughed. My people. My people are whoever pays me. He pulled out a hidden dagger. If Amanzala falls, I became a rich man. Nuru shook his head. And if Amanzala stands, you will be remembered as the man who sold his own home. Silas shouted in anger and charged forward. The two struggled on the narrow bridge. The old stones cracked beneath their feet. Suddenly, the bridge began to collapse. Nuru jumped back just in time. Silas reached for the edge, but there was nothing to hold. His bag of gold slipped from his shoulder. The coins scattered into the rushing underground river. Silas screamed as he disappeared into the darkness below. Neither he nor the gold were ever seen again. Nuru stood silently. He whispered, "A kingdom is worth more than gold." Back in the main tunnel, the battle was ending. The remaining enemy soldiers threw down their weapons. General Bakery tied their hands. King Jabari looked around. The tunnel had been saved, but something was wrong. A loud cracking sound echoed through the cave. The ceiling had been badly damaged during the fight. Huge rocks began falling. Elder Kondo looked up. The tunnel is collapsing. Panic spread among the guards. King Jabari shouted, "Everyone out!" The warriors hurried toward the exit. The warriors hurried toward the exit. But one enormous stone crashed down, blocking the passage. Several young guards became trapped. Fear filled their faces. General Bakery tried to move the stone. It would not budge. King Jabari looked around. Nearby stood a giant wooden support beam holding part of the tunnel roof. If it broke, the blocked passage would open, but the entire tunnel would collapse seconds later. Someone would have to hold the beam long enough for everyone else to escape. King Jabari stepped forward. "I will do it." General Bakery grabbed his arm. "No, you are the king." Jabari smiled gently. "And they're my people." Before anyone could stop him, he ran to the beam and pushed his shoulder against it with all his strength. "Go," he shouted. One by one, the trapped guards escaped through the opening. General Bakery refused to leave. "I'm staying with you." King Jabari looked at his lifelong friend. "If we both die, who will protect Amanzala?" Tears filled Bakery's eyes. "My king." "That is an order," Jabari said firmly. Slowly, General Bakery bowed his head. He led the last soldiers to safety. The moment everyone reached the tunnel entrance, King Jabari pushed himself away from the beam. The roof collapsed with a deafening roar. Dust filled the air. Massive rocks sealed the tunnel forever. Outside, everyone stood in silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Then, a hand reached through the dust. King Jabari stumbled out of the collapsing tunnel, covered in dirt, but alive. The soldiers erupted in joyful cheers. General Bakery embraced him like a brother. Even the old Elder Kondo laughed with relief. The hidden tunnel was gone forever. The enemy would never use it. Far across the battlefield, Commander Roland watched the cave entrance collapse. He understood immediately. His secret attack had failed. He removed his hat and looked toward the walls of Amanzala. For the first time since arriving in Africa, he realized something important. This king cannot be defeated by fear. Inside Amanzala, the people gathered in the palace square. When King Jabari appeared, the crowd cheered louder than ever before. But the king raised his hand. This victory did not belong to one man. It belonged to every person who chose courage instead of fear. The people shouted with one voice, "Freedom!" The sound echoed across the hills, far beyond the city walls. The enemy heard it, and they understood that this war was far from over. Commander Roland looked at the sunrise and quietly said, "If I cannot break their courage, I must break their hopes." No one in Amanzala knew what he was planning next. But the hardest test of the kingdom was still to come. The morning after the tunnel collapsed, a strange silence covered the battlefield. No heroes flew, no drum sounded, no soldiers marched. From the walls of Amanzala, the guards watched the enemy camp. Everything was still. General Bakery frowned. "My king, this silence worries me." King Jabari nodded. "A quiet enemy is often more dangerous than a noisy one." As the sun climbed higher, a white flag appeared outside the enemy camp. A single rider slowly approached the city gate. The guards raised their spears. "Stop!" The rider lifted both hands. "I bring a message from Commander Roland." King Jabari ordered the gates to remain closed. The messenger stood outside and read the letter aloud. "King Jabari, you have fought bravely, but every kingdom falls eventually. Bow before us today, and your people will live. Refuse, and by tomorrow evening Amanzala will be nothing but ashes." The messenger rolled up the letter. "What is your answer?" King Jabari stepped onto the city wall so that everyone could hear him. "My answer is the same as before. I will not bow." The messenger sighed. "I feared you would say that." He turned his horse and rode away.